But the word also said, if we weren't going to be teachable, he was going to teach those that should be learning from us. Let's bear that in mind also. And I praise Abba Yah, because I didn't know how I was going to start, because it was a lot of information and I didn't know where to begin. But the Rawah always will guide us. And now that I've laid that particular foundation, I'm going to go into the history of Shabbath. And some of this history is taken not just from Mikhail Shabbat Scriptural Studies channel, but also Jerusalem Script channel as well. So I want to make sure I'm giving the just due where it needs to be. Absolutely. And of course, I've done my own research as well. So this is all a mishmash here. But most of this history is taken from Why Saturday is Not Shabbath video from Mikhail Shabbat Studies. This that I'm about to expound on. We have to bear in mind that Yahweh numbers his days and not names them, as the pagans do. The pagan calendars are all names and then numbers. The names are leading. So again, we have to keep these things in mind. Now, the name Saturn, well, the name Saturday was derived from paying homage to Saturn or Satyr. So Saturn was a god in ancient Roman religion. In Latin, the god was Satimus. So you hear the similarities there? And according to Wikipedia.com, Saturn as Al, or God, described as all of time, generation, agriculture. Look at that, agriculture, and periodic renewal, among other attributes. The festival of Saturnalia occurred every December and was probably most famous. It was the most famous Roman festival where feasting, role reversals, and gift giving happened. And it lasted, it was between the 17th of December to the 31st. So this is where you get a lot of the holidays intermingled here. Like the whole feasting, the gathering, the gift giving, that's all related to this Saturnalia festival. And the 31st with the debauchery and the drinking and whatever else is going on as you're ushering in a so-called New Year. This is where all this is originating from. It was named as a planet later, though. So they took the name Saturnalia and eventually assigned it to a planet. And Saturn has the rings around it, right? Or the ring around it. That's that planet that has the ring around it, I believe it is. Or the corona, I believe it is. Anyway, most pagan nations considered Saturn as the representative of the sun. The Babylonian name for Saturn, Ninurta, Ninurta, related to the deity of fertility and the seventh day of the week. So look at that. Deity was fertility. See, that's where you get all that debauchery during Saturnalia. They were paying homage to that deity. Well, actually, because we're talking about Rome, but it's essentially the same thing. The debauchery, the sodomy that was more than likely going on during those times. It was happening in Rome. I'm sure it continued in Babylon. Taken from Jerusalem Script, the video titled Shabbat. The further word origin is an English word from Old French, Sabbat, S-A-B-A-T, Sabbat with two B's, or Sabbath, S-A-B-A-T-H. The Old French is Sabbat. The Latin is Sabbatum. In the Greek, Sabbaton. And then it was derived in Hebrew, Shabbat. So that's the breakdown of how the word came to be in each language. So the history, specifically as it relates to Mitzrayim, or Egypt, it began in Mitzrayim. So Shabbat began there, and it wasn't relegated to a 7-day system of religious observance. But in Mitzrayim, it was a day of rest from the hard labor that was forced onto the Hebrews. And you can read about that in Shemoth, Exodus 5, verses 1 to 16. The Babylonian calendar had a conceptual Sabbath keeping prior to Moshe. Prior to his existence, there was a Shabbat type of keeping on the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, and the 28th days of the month, which is essentially what's done now with our current day Shabbat. I believe it is. Yeah, it's the count is the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th. The Mitzri, or Egyptians, had a 7-day work week where the 7th day was consecrated to the pagan god Horus. And this was also prior to Moshe. Some scholars claim the Hebrews assumed conceptual Sabbath practice from Mitzri, or from the Egyptians, in error. This was being perpetuated by the Hebrews, according to some scholars, by mistake. The biblical origin, which is the most important origin, is the Hebrews, or Hebrews Shabbath, is from Yah, given during creation week in Bereshith, Genesis 2:2. And the patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they didn't keep Shabbat. There's no record of it. They didn't need to. They didn't need to because they had amunah. They had faith. And we could see this through our forefathers. Some of our forefathers, like Adam, through to Noah, they gained their righteousness through belief because they didn't have a Shabbat. They didn't have to adhere to the Shabbat. They had no Mosaic law because he didn't exist then. And so their faith allowed them to have that relationship with the Most High Yahweh, not through ritualistic observance of Shabbat. And that's, thank you again, Ruach HaKodesh. That's the key in all of this. It's the belief. But I'll get to that later in my conclusion. But that was a spoiler alert. And once the Mosaic law came into being through Moshe, it became a ritual observance, all in obedience to Yahweh, where it was specific things that needed to be done in order to give atonement, to pay atonement. Those things specific. But again, we have Yahushai now. We have Mashiach. So he is that atonement. So we don't have to do these things. We don't have the means to do these specific things. According to the Mosaic law to the letter, we don't have to do that anymore. And so again, as the word says, Yahweh's grace or his favor is sufficient. And he definitely made it to be sufficient for us through Mashiach. Hallelujah. Praise you, Abba Yah, for that understanding. The references, and I've notated several references in the Bible relating to Shabbat according to the observance in relation to Yah. So the first one, again, this is from Jerusalem Script Shabbat video. Again, he breaks all this down in entirety. I'm not even going to scratch the surface. I did a lot of the notes, but this, you definitely want to review this information for yourself. Always, again, taking it to the Father for confirmation. Shabbat video. Again, he breaks all this down in entirety. I'm not even going to scratch the surface. I did a lot of the notes, but this, you definitely want to review this information for yourself. Okay? Always, again, taking it to the Father for confirmation. But the first mention of Shabbat was during Creation Week, as I stated, confirming the Hebrew Shabbat had its origins in Abba Yah, not from other nations' conceptualizations. So it was established by Abba Yah to be observed, to esteem him. The next reference is the wilderness of Zin, from bondage to freedom, where the children of Yasharal were commanded by Yahweh to gather manna 6 days and rest the 7th day. And on the 6th day, they were to gather 2 times more, which was the preparation day. And now, by this point, it's become an official organized practice of worship. See, after this happened in the Word, that's when the 10 Commandments were established. And that's the third reference here that I'm notating is Mount Sinai, where the 10 Commandments became law, connected to the tabernacle, the temple, during Moshe's life. So because of the 10 Commandments, the Mosaic law came into being, where, again, it was specific, ritualistic ways to honor the Most High, Yahweh. He breaks that down beautifully, this brother. He really does. I definitely encourage you to review the video in its entirety. It's very, very detailed, and it gives a lot of clarity. So the word Shabbat does not mean rest, as we have been led to believe. Excuse me. Does not mean rest. The word rest didn't exist until the 4th or 5th century AD. And so, in breaking down, and I'm not going to go into specifics again because I'm trying to encourage you to watch the video in its entirety to get the full understanding. But in relation to the word Shabbat, see, it's all about context as well. When dealing with the Hebrew, we have to understand the words may mean different things depending on the context. And I pray I'm saying that right. But he gives an example of Genesis 2:2 and Exodus 20:11, and he breaks that down. But I'm just going to give what it means so that you guys can do your due diligence in this, okay? So according to Genesis 2:2, which I'm going to read the Septuagint translation first, because this is one of the older translations. And this is more correct than what we've been given. And it reads, again, Bereshith, Genesis 2, verse 2. And I'm going to say Alahayim finished on the 6th day his works which he made. And he ceased on the 7th day from all his works which he made. So he, right here in the Septuagint, it uses the correct translation, ceased. That's what it means. This is one of the definitions. It means cease. In fact, let me go back to my notes over here. In the modern Hebrew, it means to cease or stop. Shabbat. The noun, and this is from ancienthebrew.org. The noun Shabbat is a time of ceasing, and as stated, well, I didn't read that verse. Well, I did, as stated in, this is referencing Genesis 2:2 as well. So as stated in the verse, the 7th day is a time for ceasing business. In this passage, it is the verb shavat, the root word of the word Shabbat. But in reading the King James translation, it reads, and on the 7th day, Alahayim ended his work which he made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he made. And of course, you know I'm substituting God. But there, it's using the word rested. But going back to the meaning of this as well, properly applied to Yahweh, this passage of scripture means Yah reveals his Kodashah or holiness. Okay? And to get the understanding of the ancient Hebrew and how it breaks down, definitely watch the video, because he's going to explain it much better than I can. As for Exodus 20:11, the context of it, the word is nuach, Nuach. And the Ivri word means continual separation unto Yah. So in its simplest terms, holiness is connected to Yahweh because he is Kodashah. And when it's applied to his people, it's a continual practice of Kodashah unto Yah. Also, aka, also known as continued set apartness. When applied to Yahweh himself, it means Yah, eternal Kodashah, or holiness. So Exodus 20:11 properly reads, "For in 6 days Yah made Shamayim and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and he revealed his Kodashah, holiness, on the 7th day. Wherefore Yah blessed the Shabbath day and hallowed it." So once again, go back, look at the video, look how he breaks down these words. But for me to have try to break it down, it's going to make a lot more sense for him to break it down. But I wanted to give you overall what it meant and how it was applied. Okay? In the generalist, the most simplest terms that I could. And as he stated, according to Hosea 2:11, which prophesied the end of Shabbath, in the sense that it officially ended in 70 AD with the destroyed temple. So the way they did it, they could only do, we can't duplicate it. That's the point. In our modern times, we can't duplicate Shabbat according to the Mosaic law, because we don't have the Levites and we don't have the high priest. We don't have these things to be able to do so. Yahweh Shai is Shabbat, according to Matthew 12:8.